our next speaker, it's interesting. We met in Montreal at the Luminon conference that Michelin had earlier this year. We're doing the Connecting Our Future effort. I was up there for that reason. And so I'm sitting at this table with, there was a conference or a workshop that BMW was doing looking at energy efficiency around vehicles and reducing the footprint of, Chris, help me with the language of, so they would be zero carbon in their vehicles by a certain time. That's was the workshop, and they asked us to talk about and look at specific areas and things of that nature. So I'm sitting at the table with Chris, and he's from New Hampshire, and he works for he'll tell you, but the fleet transportation company. And we start talking, and I said, I'm from the upstate, and he said, well, I've been to the upstate. I said, really, great. He said, yeah, we have a facility in Malden. Awesome. So we start talking, and I was telling about this workshop, and the more I heard from him, the more they are doing with CNS wholesale grocers. That I didn't want to come talk about the transportation side, although we'll certainly touch on that, but really about, again, the business choices and the business decisions. So, proving that all roads lead to South Carolina, I'm glad to bring Chris up from New Hampshire.
Thanks, Dean. Dean really failed on this invite because he's never heard me speak before, so I don't know, Dean, was this maybe a career move on your part? No, seriously, thank you very much for the invite. Very excited to be here and share a little bit about what we do and what brought us together. So, CNS Wholesale Grocers is a 100-year-old company this year. We're the largest grocery wholesaler in North America. So what does that mean? We're not in the retail space. We don't have any stores. You'll know us in Malden as a Bilo. So we're the old Bilo warehouse. We're not, again, in the retail space, so that's separate. But we own and operate the inventory, the transportation, and the logistics that's based on Malden. So that's kind of the backdrop. Again, 100-year-old company. We're based in Keene, New Hampshire, in the middle of nowhere. And very, very solid operations, huge operations in the Northeast, in Florida, in the Southeast, strong in Texas, and then we have operations in California as well. So it's probably one of the larger companies one of the largest privately held companies that you've never heard about. Some of our customers, again, I mentioned Bilo, Winn-Dixie, Target, Awful, Valdez, and then we do a lot of business in the independent space. We operate or influence about 2,000 over-the-road power units or tractors, and then about 7,000 trailers in our environment. So I wouldn't call it we certainly are not a massively huge fleet, but we're kind of in that middle space. And Dean, when we met, it was almost a natural, to be able to share a little bit about what we're doing and how we got here. So in addition to, and I don't want to geek out because my boss keeps saying, don't geek out, you're going to lose people on the technical side. But part of the offering that we have on warehouse distribution and transportation, our owner, we're third generation privately held. The owner is still actively involved in the organization. And one of the components that we're working on right now is actually automated warehousing. So robots and automation. So we know there's a demand on human resources. We know there's a demand on labor. And what are we going to look like, and how are we going to adapt to that environment going forward in the future? So we've invested heavily in automation. And not only does that support what we do in our distribution centers, but we're now actually partnering with companies that we do business with to automate their warehouses. So it's almost that, it's like the first 100 years was traditional warehousing, and it looks like the next 200 years may be much more on the technological side of the business. So that's the backdrop on what we are. From a transportation, I got my buddy Kermit here. He's a little massively green. Some of the things that we're doing in warehouse operations, procurement, anybody that's in transportation today, and if you haven't seen it or experienced it, you've probably read about it and seen it, in multi sources of media. The driver shortages, the headwinds that we face in logistics and transportation, and certainly the demands in the supply chain are radically different than what they were 10 years ago. So we're going to market in a lot of different ways. This little company out of Seattle called Amazon that's revolutionized everything. We're one click away from having, and depending on where you're at in the country, it could come that same day, or certainly the next day. So we had multiple headwinds in terms of what we were doing and how we were doing it, and how we were going to address those constraints and how we're going to address those headwinds. Driver turnover is one of those. One of the terms we use in our world is a pass-through. So when you talk about fuel or fuel economy, no one is really too interested in it because it gets passed on to the customer, And some of you, that are involved as business owners, you've seen the, fuel surcharge and things like that. It just gets passed on, it's a flow through. And it was so I landed at CNS about 3.5 years ago, and I just absolutely became unbelievable. Like, how could you possibly say it's not important? Because it's like one of the most important things. So one of the things that our team had to work on was really changing what that landscape looked like on how we view sustainability and how we view, again, fuel. And fuel, you'll see later in the presentation, is a huge aspect of what we do. So this just kind of fell into where we were going because we didn't really we're a massively huge organization on procurement and massively huge organization in warehousing that happened to have and happened to need a transportation department that we really didn't focus on. So fortunately, the leadership saw that, and we've invested heavily, and you'll see that throughout this. The asset piece for us was we didn't have a formal replacement cycle, so we didn't know. I couldn't tell you when I landed how long a tractor was supposed to be there or how long a refrigeration unit was supposed to be there. It was just kind of like, it was a perpetual maintenance. You just kept patching it, you kept repairing it, and you hope for the best. And so we had to change some of that landscape. The systems. I'm not going to dwell on that, but the systems are really critical because everybody now wants to know, just like we would with a package that's, destined to our business or to our home, we want to know exactly where that's at. And our customers are no different. So we've leveraged and invested heavily in systems. We're going to be doing a fair amount of work with Manhattan on a TMS system, a transportation management system. Service. That piece does not stop. As a matter of fact, I think the windows that we're constrained on when we can make deliveries and how often we can make deliveries have gotten even tighter. And so they've put an additional stress on our logistics and on our teams to deliver on that. And then the communications, certainly change management is huge in everything that we do, whether it's alternative energy, whether it's new equipment. I find it interesting, and it really doesn't matter who the fleet is. We just hand a set of keys over to an asset that's, probably worth about $115,000 or $120,000, and wish them well and hope they have a safe day, and don't really go through the nuts and bolts of what's going on. And the equipment today is radically different than what it was 20 years ago. So change management was huge, and then also the external partners on communication. We had to go communicate that message because folks didn't really know who we were. We were buying, a little action in Malden, and we were buying a little action in Texas and a little action in California, but no one really collectively viewed us, or our OEMs or our sources didn't really view us as a larger player in the transportation space. So we can see, and you'll see what kind of the summary as far as the paying off part. The asset replacement strategy, we've actually had locations where we've turned drivers over who left, went out for greener pastures, and then ended up coming back because they saw we were investing back into the fleet. And that's a testament to, we could talk about environmental sustainability, but there's a human aspect to this. There's a human sustainability on this as well. And sometimes we take advantage of that, or we don't really think that process out, because the thousands of dollars that it takes us to invest in, not just finding, attracting, but then retaining quality talent. That's probably, if that's not, the top three as business owners or business leaders in this room, if talent sustainability isn't one of your top three, I'd be pretty surprised. And we're in a very competitive market, so we want to keep investing in that. We want to understand that our uptime has increased as a result of the investments we've made, and we've actually netted out equipment. We've actually taken equipment out of the equation because of the investments that we made early on, and very happy with where that's at. And again, the service, we're seeing the typical deliveries we are seeing from our customers are indicating they want to see smaller drops, smaller deliveries, more frequently. So, especially around especially around what we call organic and natural and organic lines in our warehouses. So that puts an additional stress on us to track where we're going and track where those shipments are ending up. So we just, we try and communicate upfront so that there aren't any surprises, and making sure that we're partnered with our customers, and we're certainly partnered with our team members as well. So this is that crossroads where not only when we looked at this from an economic perspective to bring the new equipment in and making these investments, we also wanted to incorporate as much safety in this as possible. So this again goes back to the human sustainability. We went all out on safety. So collision mitigation, lane departure, disc brakes on all assets, trailers and tractors. And you'd say, well, that's a big deal. You just spent a lot of money. What are you getting out of it? And I can tell you, in the 3 years that we've started this, we've already seen our rating from a DOT perspective, and we've already seen the savings from an insurance perspective, because the stopping distance, just on the brakes alone, we're again, this is that geek part coming out. 90 feet reduced stopping distance could be the difference between a non-event or a near miss and a catastrophic event. So again, not to drain any of this, but that big movement and that shift, we went from a perpetual maintenance cycle to a perpetual replacement cycle. So we know with a high degree of certainty that a yard shunt tractor that we operate today is going to be with us for 3 years, an over-the-road tractor is going to be with us for 4 years, a refrigerated unit is going to be with us for 7 years, and a dry van or just a dry trailer will be with us for 10 years. So we kind of defined that whole piece. What it also allowed us to do, because there have been so many changes in technology and there's been so many advancements in fuel economy and in axle ratios and lift axles and all of the aerodynamics, all the things that are out there, it allows us to bring that new technology in sooner versus having to depreciate it and keep it for long periods of time. So we're starting to see some of that impact again. We couldn't solve for air inflation. The trailer's easy. We couldn't solve for air inflation on the drive axle. So we now have a drive axle inflation system that is delivering revenue not only from a fuel perspective, because we get better fuel economy when the tire's inflated, but we also get better casing life on the actual tire. And then we reduce the number of the downtime that we have if we have an unscheduled breakdown somewhere. And that only helps our customers. So these things kind of feed within that supply chain. Again, not to drain into this. This is the safety slide around interior, exterior lighting. Some of the things that we've incorporated, it didn't show very well on this slide. But that was our fundamental operating principle, was that we were going to take and incorporate where this fit on the P&L, where we were going to get a return. Most of these add-on components, I'll call them, or tactics, have ROIs of less than 24 months in most all applications. So, when we're making a presentation, we're not typically making a presentation to a board or to a capital committee. This literally goes up to the owner, and it was a major shift in the way we had done business in the past. And year one was, I think, 3 rounds of discussion. Year 2 was about a 20-minute conversation, and then this year's exercise that we go through for next year's assets ended up being about, it wasn't even a 15-minute, 10-minute discussion. So we're going to keep both of our feet on the throttle to deliver the productivity. You can't see this very well. That's the 1.01 gigawatts, the flux capacitor. So that's the case. So some of the things that we're working on, these are some of the things that are in the pipeline. We're working, and we're scheduled to have actually an all-electric shunt tractor based in Malden, which plays really well from a duty cycle perspective. So you're not going to get stranded somewhere, almost made at home. You get range anxiety and things like that. When you're close to home on a campus, it makes it a lot easier to be able to, pull data from that. Also, one of the units that consumes a lot of fuel, and you wouldn't really think about this, but the next time you're in the cooler section at your local market, when you buy, ice cream or a popsicle or, anything in frozen food, that has to hit the market somehow. And all those refrigerated units have a 4-cylinder diesel engine on them, and that's what that handy-dandy fuel tank is underneath the refrigeration trailer. So that's either a 50-gallon tank or a 100-gallon tank, and that's full of diesel. So we're going after everything that we invested in refrigeration from 2016 forward is electric standby capable. So what that means is when it's dwelling on our yard waiting to either get unloaded or waiting to get delivered, and it's keeping control of temperature on that commodity in the trailer, we can plug into the grid, use that energy. From a cost standpoint, we're operating anywhere from 40, depending on the kilowatt hour and the demand and where we're at in the cycle for that 24-hour period, anywhere from 45 to 60% reduced operating cost to control that same environment. And while doing that, the draw on the engine, because we're using the electric and not the internal combustion engine, it's much more favorable on the wear and tear on the unit itself. So the unit on the right, it's very difficult to see this, but that actually has solar panels on the top of the trailer. So that's a refrigeration unit without a fuel tank. And so the premise on that is when we're finished loading it, the batteries are fully charged, and they would be fully charged either through an electric connection on the yard, or they would be pulling energy off the sun while we're making a delivery. So what we've tested so far is on produce loads. So there's different temperatures. So we start out at 38 degrees that's the warmest temperature, and then we go down to -20. And that commodity -20 is ice cream. Ice cream is very, very picky about the temperature. So the testing we've done so far is we go 11 hours on a produce load with that all-electric trailer without using an ounce of diesel. It's not connected to the tractor. It doesn't have anything to do with the pulling unit. It's a self-contained unit. So if that does well, that unit's not going to be in Malden. That's actually we're going to test that in Fresno, California. But our goal there, and we're partnered very closely with the OEM, the goal there, where it makes sense, is to adapt that where we can get enough, exposure, and we're also not getting damage to that nasty stuff that comes out of the sky in the wintertime in the Northeast. And the snow's really not the problem, because it'll actually pull, even with 2 inches or 3 inches of snow, it'll actually still operate, but we use blades and snow removal equipment to actually take and clear the tops of the trailers off. And the issue there is potentially harming and damaging the solar panels. So again, that's what we have in the pipeline, the electric yard tractor. And then we have driven also over-the-road vehicles with a couple of partners that they're not in test yet, but they're probably, I would say, on Gen 5 or Gen 6 technology, that we would look in certain locations of actually putting units that have about a 350-mile range, all electric, making deliveries without using any diesel. So those are some of the things that are, in the mix. We spent about $600 million on the purchase transportation, overhead for transportation, diesel fuel, and then we generate actually another $400 million in backhaul revenue where we pull product in and out of our warehouses, and we actually do services for other companies as well as a carrier. Holistically, 3 million miles a week, which that's a lot. We can probably go around. I don't know what that says. A couple times around the 17 times a day. So, and then diesel is about 500,000 gallons a week that we consume. So when we went into this, early on, everyone was looking at this back when diesel, a barrel of diesel was running at the time, this would have been in 15 and 16, it was running somewhere about $45 a barrel, and no one was really interested in sustainability, no one's really interested in. So what we worked on was, and actually we had to start from the top down, and this wasn't one of those, we had to start on the front line, we had to actually start all the way up on the top, and say, throw everything out that you know about the price of fuel. Because the geopolitical impact, we can't control. Natural disasters, we can't control. Supply and demand, we can't control. The facilities that distill the fluids and the fuels, and when they have a catastrophic event, we can't control any of that. But the one thing we can control is how many gallons we consume. So we threw the emotions out, we kind of scrubbed the whole concept, and once everybody understood that approach, then it was like, all of the light bulbs went off instantly when they started looking at what we were graphing out for. We had a short plan, which was a 4-year plan, then an 8, then a 12, and then we went out to 16 years. And it didn't take a lot to figure it out. Don't worry about the price, and they got it really quick. So I feel pretty good about that because the barrel obviously has gone up since then. And we still have a lot to learn, and we still have a lot to, as far as maturing the strategy, it's very early, but the early indicators from what we've been able to deliver, we had projections on here for increasing fuel efficiency by 20% by 2020. Well, we've already gotten to that. We actually got there a little bit earlier than we thought. We were projecting averages on fuel economy at 7.6 for 2020, and we're almost there in 18. So we're going to have to reshuffle this, which is that's a good problem to have. I don't mind doing that because that means that we're focusing on the right things. And then this does include also the other efficiencies, not just the engine and the transmission, but aerodynamics and some of the other things that we do. From the overall strategy, just really, kind of a three-year snapshot, we're projecting to take 11 million gallons out of our network, assuming that volume is the same and assuming that we're running the same number of miles. So we're tracking on or better than what we had said we were going to do. Some of the things, again, bringing that newer technology into the fleet sooner helps, and we're going to continue to flip more of these tactics, and we're going to continue to see where they fit, because it's not a one-size-fits-all. It really doesn't matter whether it's CNG, LNG, LPG, it's alphabet soup when you start talking about alternative fuels. There isn't the one solution in one region, because what works in one region may not work in the other region. I think a lot of folks demonstrated that today with their presentations. And then CO2 emissions and our greenhouse gas in terms of what we're doing. We're quantifying this not only with what we control, but also with what we control, what our partners control. So we do a lot of business with J.B. Hunt, where it's their tractor and their driver, but we're still responsible for the fuel. Cowan, Penske, some of the bigger players, they operate about 1,000 tractors for us, then the other 1,000 tractors are actually CNSs. So we're going to stay focused on this. We're going to continue to push this, and certainly, leverage relationships like this and building stronger partnerships, not only at the professional level, at the corporate level, and really the grassroots right here in the community. This is where we really need to spend our time. My colleague is here. Brian Trajkovski is based in Malden. I'm not, but I get here often enough, to be able to participate. Brian joined the team a little less than 90 days ago, and he's a great add to our team from a leadership standpoint. And hopefully the next time, maybe we'll actually be able to demo one of our new toys and be able to share some of that. So thanks again, Dean, for the opportunity and for your attention.
So both of you, talked about obviously both the value as it relates to the ROI in the business and the value for the environment. It seemed like there was a little bit of both in terms of decision making, but obviously the key driver is the financial bottom line. But Fraser, especially for you, as you guys go, what drove you to even think about the solar panel piece? What was the reason? And did you have an idea that financially it was going to be something that was viable, or is that something that kind of came up later in the process?
Yeah, we really didn't know if it was going to be viable or not. We wanted to be as environmentally responsible and conscious as possible. The product line that we've made that has transformed our company is a product that allows other companies to minimize their carbon footprint. So it was right up the alley. It's something we want to do. But just looking at the numbers, we just simply didn't think we could afford it. And like I said, it's kind of the perfect storm with the federal and state tax incentives and certainly the Duke rebates. That was really what made the difference for us, was the Duke rebates, because that allowed us to get such a chunk of that money back as soon as the grid went live, as soon as we put the switch on the LED lighting. So it was really kind of a perfect storm for us, but it allowed us to really to be the company we want to be. Is, Gandhi said, "Be the change you wish to see in the world," and we wanted to set an example. We wanted to show other companies it can be done.
Chris, you said it was really just a total shift in terms of the role of the fleet as part of your organization holistically. But when did the idea that this is good, not just financially, but also has an environmental, sustainable value, when did that come into play in your decision making?
So it's very similar to the economic model that the group earlier had presented with input. So we built a homegrown economic model to input all of those, and that was around uptime, downtime, and fuel economy was a huge variable in that payback. And it didn't take a lot to figure that piece out. And when we detached, and I know it sounded a little weird saying that don't worry about the price, but when we detached the emotional aspect of the price and the gallons, the rest of it came into place because folks really got that very quickly. If we would have normalized it, or if we had said, hey, we're going to assume inflation or increase, they didn't really have that much of play. But when we were taking out thousands, tens of thousands of gallons out of the equation every year, it paid for itself, literally.
Great. Questions? Yes.
What do you think about driverless trucks, and do you think that'll be an impact on energy consumption?
That's a great question, especially the second part of that question is on efficiency. We've got technology right now that if you leave it alone, it will outperform even the best of the best drivers from a technology standpoint. So the automated manual transmissions, the topographical maps that it learns routes, literally it stores 4,000 routes in its algorithm. So it knows when you go back on that same route, it knows how long the run is, it knows what the grade is, it knows when to downshift and upshift, and it knows actually down to within about 500 pounds how much of a capacity or how much of a cargo that we're carrying in there. So we're getting the benefits of that already, which interestingly enough, if you don't have the pre-work done on the technology, on collision mitigation and lane departure, you can't have autonomous vehicles. So I think there will be a place. I don't see it in New York City. I don't see it in, I don't see it in the downtown, situation or in a highly congested areas, but in certain applications, I think it's going to be a facilitator, or at a minimum, it's going to help relieve some of the stress from drivers. And we had drivers, when they jumped into automated manuals, they've been truckers, for 30 years, 40 years, said, I'm not driving that. And they're the same ones that are thanking us today because they come back much more relaxed, and they're not having to pound on that clutch continuously during the day. So, but great question.
Great. Well, thank you both. We're going to go ahead and get ready for our last panel, so we appreciate you guys being here.